What's up, guys? Toad back again on 9/11. Watch Tower Gang tonight. Tower Gang has an episode on 9/11 itself. Check that out tonight at 9/11 on 9/11, baby. Live on Rumble, YouTube, and Odyssey probably still. It's going to be a fun time tonight. Go check it out. But we're here to talk about Major League Baseball. I know that's what you guys are here for. All zero of you. Let's go. I'm just going to talk about these two games that I've plays on and let it be that. Last night, my leans, that under, I think probably could have gotten there in the Dodgers game if they didn't have Yamamoto on a short leash. They took him out after 4 innings, so they were not letting him go the full starter's workload there, and then the bullpen kind of gave it up in that game. So that was something that needed to be considered there. And I wound up being correct on Yu Darvish and the San Diego side. It was a bad spot for Seattle, and San Diego did get the win, although Darvish didn't really pitch particularly well, I would say. I think he gave up 2 home runs, maybe, but he only gave up 2 runs in 5 innings. They took him out after 5, and he really did not throw a lot of pitches. He was just really efficient, which a lot of times he is not because he tends to walk a lot of people and rack up strikeouts. But a weird, un-Darvish-like performance from him. Maybe he's changing the way he pitches as an old man. All right, let's check out this card today for Major League Baseball. I'm not even sure that any of the games that I'm not playing are even really worth commenting on, except maybe, you have the battle of the rookies here that I always like to talk about with Anaheim and Minnesota, and that is not a game I'm going to be touching. Jack Kohanowitz and Zebby Matthews. Kohanowitz, the way he's been pitching, I will just say, is strange to me because he is not a strikeout guy at all. His strikeout numbers are really low. He's had some games where I think he hasn't had any strikeouts at all, but he pitches efficiently, doesn't throw a lot of pitches, and somehow gets through like a decent amount of innings, not allowing that many runs. Very bizarre to me. Kind of a junk pitcher style. I don't know if he's going to continue to have success like that because I think he is still putting too many men on base. So I don't know. Zebby Matthews has kind of been all over the place. He has shown the ability to strike people out, and he doesn't really walk that many people, but he's been way too hittable, which is really destroying his stats. So you might think that might be a type of game where I'd come in and play the under. Scott, what's up, man? With 2 rookies there who I don't think have been seen before by the opposing offenses, but no, that's not something I'm that interested in. What I am interested in is playing on teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt, even if you might think that they look like they're not trying anymore. I'm going to propose that they actually still are somewhat fighting for this. And the first one of those is going to be the Boston Red Sox. My Red Sox. I'm going to play the Red Sox. I got it at minus 118, I believe, something like that. I think that number is still out there. You could lay like around minus 120. I think that's right in range of what you want to look for here. Minus 120. It looks like they're up to minus 124 as a home favorite. Baltimore is, of course, going to draw the public action. They got 79% of the tickets, 81% of the cash as it stands right now, although I'm not sure that they're going to wind up actually being the team that's getting more of the cash here because I don't agree with it. I don't see it, and I'll talk about why there's no way I would ever want to play on Dean Creamer in Fenway in a minute. And I'm going full game on both of these because even though I like the starting pitching matchup, and I think that factors in heavily into both of these matchups, I am also playing it because of the motivational standpoint, where I do think that the team that I'm going to be playing in both instances is the team that is more motivated to actually get the win here. So the full game makes sense. And based on what happened yesterday, I don't really see a reason to not take their I don't see any reason to exclude their bullpens, I should say. So Red Sox Orioles, this is the first game up. Like I said, Boston minus 118, I believe is what I got this at. Looking at what happened last night, the Orioles did beat the Red Sox after the Red Sox smashed them in the first game of the series. Red Sox continued their struggling ways and didn't even do well against Albert Suarez, who is kind of mystifying to me because I don't think he's that good a pitcher. He's kind of old, and he's somehow putting together some good outings, and he outpitched Cutter Crawford, who didn't really pitch that poorly either. Red Sox lost the game. Both teams used 3 relief pitchers, but Baltimore did use kind of the back end of their bullpen a little bit there, more so than the Red Sox did. So I think the bullpens can kind of be tossed out a little bit, even though I don't trust the Red Sox bullpen very much at all. But I think as far as like the bullpen rest scenario, I think we're looking at a similar circumstance for both teams here. And like I said, because of the motivational aspect of this, I'm just playing the full game on this. Looking at the matchup for this one, this is Dean Kremer. Like I said, I'm about to talk about this guy. As you know, if you watch my show, I'm not a Dean Kremer fan. I fade him every so often, and I'm fading him here. Stats on the season, not great. 4.27 ERA, 1.27 whip. That's a pretty high whip. 106 to 47 strikeout walk ratio isn't that bad. The 95 hits in 111 and 2/3 innings is his best stat. I mean, he's not allowing that many hits. So he has been decent at points this season. But, I mean, I think he was starting to struggle a little bit recently in some of these outings. This at Cleveland, at Toronto. I mean, granted, Cleveland's a good offense. Houston's a good offense. Playing at Colorado is not an easy place to play. I mean, at Toronto, you don't really have an excuse for walking 5 guys against Toronto, really. But his stats overall, like if you just look at the stats as a whole in the month of September, or the month of August, 26 to 15 strikeout walk ratio is terrible. In 30 and 2/3 innings pitched, that amount of walks is insanely high. So his command has not been very good, and it kind of continued, even though he had pitched a 6-inning. I can't talk in the morning. He pitched a 6-inning shutout against Tampa, although Tampa is a pretty weak offense. Only gave up 2 hits in that one. Still did walk 3 guys, though, so his control issues remain. And the fact that he had a 5.28 ERA over the entirety of last month, over 6 starts, doesn't speak that well for Kremer. So I don't like Kremer in general. But against the Red Sox, he also struggles kind of mightily. In a 52 at-bat sample size against the Red Sox hitters, they have put up a 327 average off him and 1,080 OPS. So decent-sized sample here to look at. And the Red Sox have done pretty successfully offensively against Dean Kremer. 7 walks and 16 strikeouts as well. So a lot of walks in there too. So his control hasn't been very good. And just to kind of top it off here, Dean Kremer, 4 starts in his career at Fenway. He's 0-3, only went 16 1/3 total across the 4 starts, giving up 25 hits, 19 runs, 4 home runs, 9 walks, and only 13 strikeouts for a 10.47 ERA across 4 starts in his career at Fenway Park. I think this might be just regular season only, but I kind of doubt that there are any playoff games to factor in there. An over 2 whip, 2.08, and 467 opponent batting average there. So Dean Kremer has horrific numbers at Fenway Park. So I'm fading Dean Kremer here. And Nick Pivetta, I do think he is the better of the 2 pitchers, even though his ERA makes him look like he's the slightly worse of the 2 pitchers. So the public, they're going to look and say, well, Dean Kremer has the better ERA, and the Orioles have the way better record, so let's take the Orioles, getting them as an underdog, right? I'm saying that is not the way to go here, obviously. Nick Pivetta has a much better whip at 1.15, so I think that's the better indicator. I think he is the better pitcher, and he's been in somewhat better recent form, even though, his 5.23 ERA in August is also not terrific, but 19 to 6 strikeout walk ratio and only 18 hits allowed in 20 2/3 tells me that he was pitching decently and just did surrender more runs than maybe he should have. His control has been a lot better than Kremer's has as of late, and just in general across the course of the season. He did face Baltimore recently. So, Baltimore has recent familiarity with him, but they just have familiarity with him in general. I mean, he's a starter who's been around for a while, who's in the same division, so I don't think the fact that he faced them recently matters. I'm sure Kremer faced the Red Sox recently too, right? Probably. I mean, he's faced them this year at the very least. He didn't face them that recently, but actually, I guess he hasn't faced them this year. I'm kind of surprised by that. But anyway, I mean, there is familiarity on both sides here, so I don't think that really matters. Nick Pivetta, in that month that he had that wasn't very good, every start was on the road, though. So that's not exactly that easy a thing to do. And putting up that strikeout walk ratio, not bad. And then he had an okay start, even though I don't like to see the 3 walks there. And it's against a really bad White Sox team. But sort of kind of maybe rounding back into form a little bit here. Pivetta, I mean, he does have somewhat worse stats at Fenway than he does on the road, but I think that's just to be expected because Fenway is a more hitter-friendly park. So I don't know that there's really anything to read into as far as that's concerned. And against Baltimore, big sample size, 77 at-bats. He's done decent. He's done okay against them, like average, basically, but better than Creamer's horrific numbers against Boston. So Pivetta does have the somewhat better numbers against Baltimore. And this is a very good Baltimore offense, so the fact that Pivetta's numbers are okay against them, I mean, that's not really a bad thing. 23-7 strikeout walk ratio, held him to a 260 average and a slightly high 776 OPS. But Dean Creamer is the worst of these two pitchers in general. He is the worst against the opposing lineup and in this park as well. So I'm going with the Red Sox here. And I think it's the Red Sox who are going to have more motivation, man, because Baltimore, even though, yeah, they have the better record, but that also means that Baltimore has some nice padding in the wild card race right now. Like Baltimore, it's basically impossible that they're not going to make the playoffs at this point, even though you do have a cluster down at the bottom of this wild card race between basically everybody else, which Kansas City has kind of put some distance between them and the rest too. So it's kind of like Minnesota, Boston, Seattle, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, and Detroit is in the mix. But Baltimore's like 5 or 6 games, I think, ahead of the rest of the pack there. So, or ahead of like those other teams besides Kansas City, I suppose. So Baltimore, they're not really in danger of losing their wild card spot here. The Red Sox are completely on the ropes here. And if they really have any sense of like, we could still do this, like they're lucky to even still be in this race at this point. They got to be motivated, man. And I like the pitching matchup for it. And the public is going to be on the team with the better record, Baltimore Orioles. They see that Baltimore won last night, too, to bounce back from the first game of the series. So I think you got to go with the Red Sox in this one. They better show up, man. They should have the more motivation here. Like I said, Baltimore is sitting much more comfortably in the wild card hunt right now. And they don't really have a big series up next, although it is against another one of the teams that is in the mix there for the wild card in Detroit. So does that mean Baltimore should be motivated? Well, yeah, like kind of. But like I said, they have enough padding in the wild card race right now that I think they're sitting much, much more comfortably than Boston is and Detroit, their next opponent. So there may be possibly some spots to look to maybe even take Detroit in that upcoming series as well. That's play one. The other play is also a side, and it's a very similar situation, and it's Seattle Mariners minus 108 is where I'm going in the second game that I have here. This is San Diego at Seattle. This is a good situational spot for Seattle because I mentioned it last night. Seattle was returning home from the longest road trip out of all the teams. I think there were maybe a couple other teams. I think Atlanta might have been returning home from a road trip or something too last night. Or no, Washington was, I guess. Atlanta's at Washington. So I forgot to mention Washington, but that was a game where it's just the Braves are going to be a heavy public favorite anyway, and not really a team that I really wanted to play on necessarily, although road favorites do tend to do well against those home teams returning home from road trips. If that returning home team is an underdog, they actually do even worse typically, although they're an underdog for a reason. It means they're a sucky team. Anyway, Seattle Mariners return home from a road trip, a long road trip, a 3-series road trip that did have them mostly still staying on the West Coast, but I think it did take them into the Central Time Zone or something to St. Louis. Now they're returning home. They returned home last night. They lost. They didn't do well. George Kirby was their pitcher last night. He's good generally, but as I pointed out, he did not have good numbers against San Diego. He did not do well last night. Yu Darvish was able to get through 5 innings and not throw a lot of pitches, so he helped San Diego in keeping Seattle's run total down. But Seattle, not a good hitting team, so that is the one real advantage that San Diego has here is they're much better offensively than the Mariners. So that worries me a little bit, but I think the pitching matchup, as I explained it, will tell you why I still like the Mariners here. And in Baltimore does have a slight offensive edge as well, but the Red Sox offense is certainly competitive. I mean, the Red Sox pitching has really been their problem. So there isn't that much of a gap between those two offenses. There is a gap in the offenses here, but I like the pitching matchup, and I like the situation for Seattle. Seattle, they're in that spot where when a team returns home from a road trip and they don't do well in that first game back from the road trip because of the distractions of returning home, you have to get back to home life, whatever, you kind of get that put away, and that loss tends to shock you such that you tend to be more focused in that next game if you lost that game. So that second game back home, if you did poorly in the first game, tends to be a positive situation in these daily sports. Baseball, basketball, hockey, it kind of all works the same way. So Baltimore, Seattle is in that spot. So Seattle is in a positive situational spot. So that's kind of the starting point here. So I like that. The market is worrying me. The market looks like it's against them, flipping San Diego from plus 100 to minus 106, 85% of the cash on them and only 52% of the tickets. You figure San Diego is going to be public because just like Baltimore, they are the team with the better record, and they're the team sitting more comfortably in the wild card standings, even though San Diego has less padding between them and the teams that are behind them in the wild card standings. They're still sitting fairly comfortably, whereas Seattle, as I pointed out, is not sitting as comfortably. Seattle is on the verge of elimination, and they're slightly behind the Red Sox, I believe, right now, and slightly behind Detroit. So Seattle, again, if they have any sense of we could still do this, any sense of motivation at all, any sense of wanting to do something here, well, I guess that is motivation. They should have that motivation, though, because they are still battling for that wild card and have they basically are in a situation. When you're in a situation where you have to win, there is a reason for it. It means it's because you're not good enough to be in a situation where you don't have to be in that situation. But even so, Seattle should be the more motivated team here, is what I'm saying. Whereas San Diego does have that little bit of padding there in the wild card where they're not really in danger of losing at that spot at this point. So that's the situation here. San Diego, they do have a good pitcher on the mound. They have Michael King on the mound. He has been good generally this season. 3.10 ERA. 1.21 whip is a little bit high because he does tend to be a little bit wild. Over the course of the season, really high strikeout rate, 185 strikeouts, but fairly high walks as well, 58. Only 132 hits allowed, 156 and 2/3 innings pitched. So he doesn't allow that many hits, but that strikeout rate is really, really high. And I think what that's causing is it's causing him to kind of wear down to some extent. He had a really good ERA still in the month of August, 2.73, but he didn't face a lot of good offenses, really. Minnesota and the Mets were the two toughest offenses there. Pittsburgh, not a very threatening offense. St. Louis, not really either. And he struggled against St. Louis. He kind of struggled with wildness throughout that whole month, man. So I think the ERA is actually misleading because the 33-12 strikeout walk ratio, it's a high strikeout rate, but that high walk rate is kind of alarming. So I think that that is indicating that there's something a little bit off about his control, man. It's a little bit worse than what he was doing in the prior months, as you can see here. So he's suffering from a little bit of wildness. I think the fact that he's throwing so hard and striking out so many people over the course of a full season, even though he is pretty experienced now. He's been around for a while now. I think that still can kind of take its toll later in the season, even if you're used to it. And that might be what we're seeing here. Even though he did bounce back pretty nicely with this start here with only one walk, 8 strikeouts against San Francisco. But it is a pretty weak San Francisco offense. And now he has thrown 100 pitches in 2 straight starts again, where that's not something that he does a lot. As you can see here, I don't even know if he's done that this season. This was the closest that he came to it, I guess, was here. But then he was facing a whole bunch of road starts in a row, so I don't know if you can really take that much away from that, but he did have a poor start the next time out at Colorado, but it is in a tough environment and high elevation, kind of a bad spot, and he just struggled against Colorado both times this year for whatever reason. So I don't know if there's that much to take away from that, but he has thrown a lot of pitches in his 2 most recent starts, so it is possible we're seeing a slightly tired arm out of Michael King. And then look at him against Seattle. Even though Seattle's offense isn't that good, his numbers against them aren't that great. They're 11 for 40 off of him, so it's an okay sample size. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 9-5 strikeout walk ratio is not very good either. That's kind of a lot of walks. He's held them to a 275 average, which isn't that high, but it's mediocre for both sides, really. But then a 906 OPS. So because of the walks and the the home runs. King actually hasn't been that successful against Seattle in his career. And this is a pitcher's park, so he should probably do better. I mean, he pitches in a pitcher-friendly park as well in San Diego. Seattle is also another one. So I don't expect him to do that poorly, but his numbers are not that great against Seattle. And I don't think he's made a full start ever in the stadium, because I looked at his career stats, and it looked like he only had 3 relief appearances in his career against Seattle, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I guess, was he a relief pitcher for a while back in the day? Maybe he was. Yeah, I guess he was coming out of the bullpen for a while there. Yeah, he wasn't a full-time starter until this year, actually, with San Diego. So that's kind of interesting. So maybe that is what's factoring into him wearing down throughout the season, because even though he is experienced, he's never actually pitched a full season as a starter before. So maybe that's what's kind of taking its toll on him. So I do actually kind of like that aspect of this. So I think that does explain why he might be wearing down a bit, because he's a high strikeout pitcher, man. He's a guy that throws high heat, throws hard. And when you're doing it out of the bullpen, it's totally different when you switch over to having to do it as a starter and you're throwing more innings and it's more taxing on your arms. So I think that does have something to do with it. So we'll actually be fine fading Michael King here, and I'm fading what we're seeing in the market here. But look at what's on the other side, man. You have a guy who doesn't throw as hard, and Brian Wu, who is the younger guy, and I think he's in his second season as a starter in Seattle's rotation. He has been good for them, man, and I don't think he's going to wear down as much, because I think he hasn't been in the rotation for the entire season this year. I think there was some time where he wasn't in the rotation. Yeah, he was out between he didn't start the season until May, I guess. So yeah, he has had a shortened season, so I think that'll help. But he also doesn't throw as hard. And Brian Wu is more of a command pitcher. He's not as much of a strikeout pitcher. So I think that helps you pitch over the course of the season too. And he actually has the better numbers than King over the course of the season too, except for the strikeouts. 2.36 ERA, 0.85 whip. I mean, those are some pretty good stats, man. His strikeout walk ratio is still really good because his walk rate is unbelievably low. So he's the guy that has way better control, even though he's not the better strikeout pitcher. 77-9 strikeout walk ratio is still a great ratio because he walks so few hitters. He has one of the lowest walk rates in baseball. And you think that means he's throwing too many pitches over the plate. That's not really the case. He hasn't been very hittable. 75 hits allowed, 99 innings pitched. So he's the guy who's thrown way fewer innings than Michael King has. So he's had the shortened season. He does go maybe slightly deeper into games. So you see he was getting unleashed more in the month of August, going deeper into all those starts, going at least 6 1/3 in every one of those starts, not allowing more than 4 earned runs in any of those starts. Only allowing 25 hits in 40 1/3, 34-3 strikeout walk ratio, and 2.23 ERA that month. So he's just continuing to pitch well, and it continued in that most recent start against Oakland. Even though he gave up too many hits, 8 hits in 5 innings, still not a bad start at all. 2 earned runs allowed, 6.0 strikeout walk ratio. That's still fine. This guy has been very, very consistent, man. If you throw out that one start where he allowed 4 earned runs, or 2 starts, I guess, that were both against Anaheim on the road for whatever reason. So any start that was not on the road against Anaheim, throw all those out, and he didn't allow more than 3 earned runs in any start, even though some of them were a little bit shorter in there. But he's been very consistent this season, man. So I like Wu. And then what's going to put this over the top here is that San Diego has never seen him before, except for Higashioka has seen him twice, and he's 0 for 2 against him with a strikeout. Other than him, nobody else in San Diego's lineup has ever faced Wu before. So you have this good young pitcher who has good control and has the ability to obviously fool major league hitters, even though the strikeout rate isn't that high. That tends to be an advantage to the pitcher, man, when these hitters have not seen him before, like I say. And Wu is one of the better young pitchers here, man. He has quite excellent stats. I like this guy, and he's improved over what he did last year, too. Last year, he was pretty decent. This year, very, very good numbers. So I like that, and I think that's an extra edge to him that San Diego hasn't seen him before. So that can help, all of that can help mitigate San Diego's offensive prowess a bit. And the fact that this is a pitching park, and maybe you expect this to be kind of a pitching duel, lower scoring game, that tends to alleviate some of that offensive difference as well. Like when you have a team that's way better offensively, but if you're in a park that's going to lower those run totals on both sides, and you have two pitchers that might be doing the same, and it becomes a lower scoring game, then you're the team with the worst offense. You're more likely to still be in that game, man. So I'm doing it, and you're getting Seattle at essentially kind of an underdog money line price almost at this point because they're at a cheaper price than the minus 110. So Seattle minus 108. That's going to be the play in that one, even though, yeah, the market indicators worry me on that one a little bit, but that's going to do it for me today, man. So we get two sides here, Boston minus 118 and Seattle minus 108. And it's a situation where you have we're fading two teams that are sitting more comfortably in the wild card standings up against teams that are at home, not eliminated yet, in decent bounce back spots with the better of the two starting pitchers on the mound, in my opinion, and the better of the pitching matchups, especially. And with what should be more motivation because they're the teams that are closer to being eliminated from the wild card race. So similar situations in both games. That's the way I'm doing it. That's going to do it for me, man. Have a good day. Once again, I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow me on Twitter for all my political shit posting. Follow the Tower Gang podcast, man. It's 9/11. We're on tonight. We're on every Wednesday at 9:11 p.m. Tower time. It is Tower Day. 9/11 at 9/11 tonight. We're going to have something hilarious in store, even if it does wind up being on the side of, this is just another regular episode of Tower Gang. That might be the case, but it's always pretty funny, man. We've hit a groove right now. We've hit a stride. Every episode is making me laugh a lot recently. There really hasn't been a lull in these episodes recently, so go check that out. We're on all the available platforms. Peace out, man. Have a good one.